The report was 43 pages long. It named 4 people. It outlined 11 years of fraudulent death claims across 3 counties, and it had been submitted to the State Insurance Regulatory Office on a Tuesday morning in March. By Friday, the man who wrote it was gone. No phone call, no note, no activity on his bank accounts. His car was found at a rest stop off Interstate 77, engine off, doors unlocked, coffee still in the cup holder. His name was Dale Mercer, 51 years old, 24 years in fraud investigation, no history of mental illness, no financial problems, no known enemy. His supervisor described him as the most methodical investigator he had ever worked with. His colleagues said he had seemed calm the week before he disappeared. Not nervous, not distracted. Calm. The kind of calm, one former colleague later said, that comes from a man who believes he has already done everything. Mercer had filed the report to the correct channel. He had followed every procedure. He had documented everything, and 3 days later, he was gone. The report sat in a regulatory inbox for 11 days before anyone opened it. By then, 2 of the 4 people named inside it had already retained attorneys. The regulatory office assigned the case to a compliance officer named Brian Stoll. Stoll had handled dozens of fraud referrals over his 12-year career. He opened Mercer's report on a Wednesday afternoon expecting routine paperwork. He read it straight through without stopping. When he finished, he closed the file, sat back, and called his direct supervisor immediately. Not by email, by phone. That detail would matter later. Mercer's report documented a coordinated scheme involving falsified medical assessment, manipulated policy application, and death claims paid out on individuals who had either never existed or had died under circumstances that were never properly investigated. The 4 named individuals operated across 3 counties in southern Ohio. None of them worked in the same industry. None of them had any visible professional connection, but the money moved between them in a pattern so consistent it looked almost mechanical. Stoll flagged the report as priority and requested a full case file on Dale Mercer's disappearance from the county sheriff's office. What came back stopped him cold. The sheriff's office had classified Mercer's disappearance as a voluntary absence. No investigation had been opened. No missing persons report had been formally filed. Mercer's employer, a private fraud consultancy, had contacted the sheriff's office the day after he vanished. The responding deputy had noted in his log that there was no immediate evidence of foul play. Case left open. No follow-up scheduled. Stoll pulled the deputy's name and ran it through the state employee database. The deputy had transferred to a different county 8 days after taking that. The transfer had been approved in under 48 hours. Standard transfers took 6 to 8. The deputy's name was Aaron Kowalski. Stoll contacted the county he had transferred to, a small jurisdiction near the West Virginia border called Meigs County. He was told Kowalski was on extended leave. No return date given. Stoll noted it and moved on. He had 4 names from Mercer's report, and he started working through them systematically. The first 2 were unremarkable on the surface, a retired property assessor and a former claims processor, both with clean records, both difficult to locate through standard channels. The third name was different, a man named Gerald Foss. Foss had no professional license, no registered business, and no employment history in any state database going back 15 years. But his name appeared on 7 policy applications across 4 different insurance providers, always as a secondary contact, never as the primary holder, always close enough to the claim to matter, never close enough to be named as a beneficiary. Stoll sent Mercer's full report to a senior fraud analyst at the state attorney general's office named Raymond Cross. Cross called him back within the hour. His first question wasn't about Foss. It wasn't about the deputy. It was about Mercer himself. Specifically, who else had seen the report before it was. Stoll told him it had gone through standard internal review. Cross went quiet for a moment. Then he said something that reframed everything Stoll thought he understood about them. He told Stoll that Dale Mercer had contacted the Attorney General's office directly 2 weeks before he filed the report, not to submit anything, just to ask a single question, whether whistleblower protections applied to private contractors. Mercer had known he was exposed. That single phone call to the Attorney General's office told Stoll everything about the man's state of mind 2 weeks before he vanished. He wasn't paranoid. He was careful. And careful men don't disappear by accident. Raymond Cross pulled the internal log of Mercer's inquiry. It had been received, noted, and routed to a junior compliance. No follow-up had been made. No one had called Mercer back. He had filed his report anyway. Cross requested the complete internal review trail for Mercer's submission. Every person who had accessed or approved it before it reached the regulatory inbox. The trail showed 3 internal sign-offs. 2 were standard administrative stamps. The third was a senior review signature from a department head named Walter Prudhoe. Prudhoe had approved the report for submission on Monday evening. Mercer disappeared Friday. Cross looked up Prudhoe's professional history. Clean record, 17 years in the department, no disciplinary action. But one detail stood out. Prudhoe had previously worked as a private claims consultant for the same firm that employed Dale Mercer. They had worked there at the same time for almost 3 years. Cross called Prudhoe directly. Prudhoe confirmed he knew Mercer professionally, described their relationship as collegial but distant, said he hadn't spoken to him in years. Then Cross asked him a simple question. He asked whether Prudhoe had discussed the report's contents with anyone between Monday evening and Tuesday morning. Prudhoe paused for 4 full seconds before answering. He said no. Cross noted the pause, ended the call, and immediately requested Prudhoe's personal phone records for that 48-hour window. What came back 2 days later was not what. Prudhoe had made 11 calls then. 10 of them were to the same number, a number registered to Gerald Foss. 11 calls in one night. The shortest was 40 seconds. The longest was just over 22 minutes. Cross brought Prudhoe back in, this time formally, with a state attorney. Prudhoe arrived, too calm for a man whose phone records had just placed him in direct contact with a named suspect hours before a key witness vanished. He acknowledged the calls, said Foss was an old acquaintance, said the conversations were personal, unrelated to the report, said he couldn't recall the specific details of what was discussed. The state attorney noted that 10 calls in a single evening to the same person suggested something beyond casual conversation. Prudhoe didn't respond to that. He simply asked whether he was being formally charged. He wasn't, not yet. He left the interview without another word. Cross turned his attention fully to Gerald Foss. Locating him took 9 days. Foss was eventually traced to a rented property outside Gallup, a small river town in southern Ohio, the kind of place where nobody asks questions about unfamiliar faces. When investigators arrived at the property, the landlord said Foss had moved out 4 days earlier, paid his remaining rent in cash, left nothing behind except a single prepaid phone, wiped, but not destroyed. A forensic technician named Scott Delaney recovered partial data from the device. Most of it was unreadable, but one fragment remained intact. A text message draft, never sent. 7 words. He already made copies before he filed. Cross read it, then he called Stoll. If Mercer had made copies of the report before submitting it, and someone knew that, then wherever Dale Mercer was, he hadn't simply been silent. He had been anticipated. The copies were found 6 weeks later, not in a safe, not in a lawyer's office, in a rented storage unit in Parkersburg, West Virginia, 40 miles from the rest stop where Mercer's car had been found. Inside was a hard drive, a printed duplicate of the full report, and a handwritten log Mercer had kept separately from his official instigation. The log went back 14 months. It documented everything the formal report contained, and several things, names of individuals who had been approached but refused to cooperate, dates of meetings he had requested that were quietly canceled, a note about an internal email he had accidentally received, forwarded to him by mistake, that referenced his investigation by name 3 weeks before he had told anyone inside the department he was working on. Someone had known before he filed, before he even finished. Cross spent 2 months working through the log methodically. Prudhoe was eventually dismissed from his position pending a formal ethics investigation. Gerald Foss was located in Kentucky 4 months later, living under a different name, and was brought in for federal questioning. The 4 individuals named in Mercer's original report were indicted on conspiracy and fraud charges. 3 of them took plea agreements. Dale Mercer was never found. No body, no confirmed sighting, no credible lead after the storage unit. His case remains classified as an open missing persons investigation. The report he filed, the one that cost him everything, resulted in the recovery of over $4 million in fraudulent claims. His name appears nowhere in the official press release, just the case number and a department stamp, approved for submission. If real investigations like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to Case Without Name, new cases every week.